Welcome to another episode of Saturday's Warrior. Today we are going to be looking at our power rankings after week 3. We're going to be making week 2 what comes after 3? 4, 4.
Week 4. There you go,
Week
Trevor.
4
We're
picks.
into it.
Okay. And I can't edit, so I'm on the road right now. So this is just going to have to go. So we're on week 4, and so we're going to make our week 4 picks. BYU did not play this last week, so we won't be recapping a game, but we do want to take a little look here as we get going. Something that did happen last week that went around that came out after we did our last video, and I want to get into that. Before I do, if you are a fan of Big 12, college football, BYU, all of that, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. We do this every Monday. We generally go live. We're not this week because of scheduling conflicts, but we go live. We love having you in the chat. And then we'll also do our live reactions after the game. This week will be a little different because Adam and I will both be at the game this week. And so we will
be driving home.
We try to get a little bit, there from the stadium or perhaps on the drive home or so. I don't know how we'll do it. We'll figure it out. But we'll get stuff to you. But generally, that's how it works. We love getting the participation, the comments and everything in there. So make sure to join us live and be part of that discussion. So anyway, going into it, what I was alluding to before, what we missed from this last week was, I'll just go ahead and pull it up. So there's this video that went around. If anyone's on social media, and I won't play it. This is an AP voter talking about.
We're missing volume, Trevor.
Oh, you can't get that volume?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, go find this. So I will read some of this. She says, I don't want to get too much into my process or my logic. It's really fun, but it probably doesn't matter in the end. And she's trying to explain how she had Florida up 2 spots over USF after losing to them in the prior week. And so it's just, and she's saying, oh, it all evens out in the end because all the voters and it doesn't really matter. And it's all just a lot of fun. And so she's gotten a lot of backlash, obviously.
Imagine.
Because there's a lot of people that saying like already have issues with the AP, and then for someone to come out and say that this is their process and that it doesn't matter when it literally impacts which schools are going to be able to get to the playoff. So it has financial impacts, it has impacts on the national championship race, and for her to just dismiss that. So she's gotten torn apart, and she's somewhere in there says something about enjoying the feedback from fans and at it, but apparently shortly after like shut down comments and everything because she was getting such backlash from this. So I don't know. We haven't talked a lot about the AP poll up to this point on the show. I know a lot of BYU fans have been really upset by the disrespect or whatever, not getting into the top 25 at this point in the season. And I haven't, because I just don't put that much stock into the AP, especially this early on, even though I've taken issue with the preseason poll because it anchors the conversation for the rest of the season. And they continue to, oh, well, you started here, so we'll move you up a little, we'll move you down a little. Case in point, this week, Notre Dame is still in the top 25 after going 0-2. And so, and then you see USF, they beat Florida, but then the next week lose to a top 10 Miami. So that should be a quality loss because the SEC is chock full of quality losses all the time. But then USF drops out while Florida remains ranked. And so the inconsistencies within the AP poll and the obvious bias that goes into it has real impact. And so I understand. I'm not necessarily saying BYU, look, at this point, they've played 2 bad teams. They've won very handedly, and they've looked good. And I think probably done enough to be in the top 25. They're just on the outside. I don't, in and of itself, I don't hate it. It's like, you know what, you can make an argument either way. What does bother me, though, is that it's going to hurt BYU's chances. Like the margin of error for BYU come playoff time is going to be incredibly slim. And so that's where it has me worried. But in the case of BYU, but in the grander scheme of things, I just take tons of issue with the poll in general, and just how much weight is put into it and how little thought, for people like this voter put into it, or the inconsistencies that are there, and it's I think a problem for the game. But because we haven't talked about it yet, like what is your feeling on the AP poll so far this season?
Well, a couple things. It is a joke. A preseason poll is based on logo recognition, as well as the first few weeks. I mean, the polls mean nothing for 4 weeks. We don't know who anyone is, right? I mean, you could name so many circumstances of a team going out and losing to a team that was supposed to be bad, they turn out to be great, or vice versa. I mean, there's so much chaos at the beginning, and it's honestly, they'll keep the AP poll around because it's been here forever. They'll keep the same format because it generates so many eyeballs, which is the point of media. It generates this conversation. Is there's enraged fans every year. It's been that way since the poll started. It will continue to be that way because you got voters who are voting blind. Even if everybody took their job seriously, you don't know who the teams are. Nobody's walking around those practices in preseason and seeing how it's going. There's no access. There's no media access to that level. So it's all a guess, and it's all based on brand recognition to start the season. So that's my thoughts on the poll overall. I do disagree slightly on the impact it has. It does have an impact, especially last year when the playoff committee took the AP poll verbatim as their top 12 teams. I mean, verbatim. It was awful. That was awful. And so I would love to see. I like that playoff committee waits so they can judge the teams, but obviously that poll has a weight on the playoff committee. So I don't want to say there's no impact because there is an impact. However, if you take BYU last season, coming off a 5-7 campaign, everybody had them. If you had ranked all 130 teams, they were past 60 to start the season. They were nowhere on anyone's radar. And BYU makes it up to number 6 in the playoff rankings. Number 6. And if we had handled business, we would have ended the season top 5 if we had taken care of business. So in that sense, the wins on the field do matter. I don't want to say that it's just the brand that matters and it's just this, because we get the short end of the stick as BYU right now. We do. We got to make it to the playoff multiple times before our brand starts to carry a little bit more recognition. But I do think it will carry that recognition in the end if you deliver on the field. So I don't know that it sways everything. If you're right on the edge, you could have made an argument that if BYU had a little bit more respect last year in the AP poll, maybe that would have influenced the playoff rankings. We had a chance to get that last playoff slot, like a lot of people said we deserved by the end of the year. So it can, on the fringes, have an impact there on a season. By and large, most teams lose enough games to not be considered, or clearly win enough games to be in the top 10, and they're not on the fringe. So it matters when you're right on the fringe, and unfortunately for BYU, when you're trying to make it into the playoff, that's where you end up. So it has an outsized impact on teams like BYU or like Boise State or like Utah, because that's where you live. A lot of the Big 12 teams can live there. So it is frustrating from that standpoint, but I think by and large, we own our destiny by winning on the field. And you can force the AP poll's hand. You can force the committee's hand, by as evidenced by us hitting number 6 last year.
Yeah, but this is where I disagree with it, because like they were debating this on BYUSN, and Spencer's take was, it doesn't matter, it's fun, it's all just to garner conversation, which is fine if that were the case, and he's in the media, and yeah, it's great to talk about, and I get it, like it doesn't like actually matter, and in that case, I don't really care, like use it as bulletin board fodder or whatever, but it does have a real impact. I mean, like you said, last year it feels like the committee is less and less independent from the AP poll. It's more and more influenced by what's happening in the AP poll, and where the AP poll starts this season definitely has an impact on where it is later in the season. Because again, you'll have, look at the benefit of the doubt that Clemson gets, from these losses, like, or Notre Dame. Like how much do we have to see them lose to even see them fall out of the top 25? And then along the way, they get credit. Oh, that was a top 25 win. Yeah, but that wouldn't be a top 25 matchup today, but they get credit for it. And then they go full circle. And so this is where I'm actually to the point where, hot take, I have to root for Alabama to win games, because they looked bad against Florida State. That if the SEC actually looks top heavy because that's something that they have is they all beat up on each other, which is fun because they're out. No SEC team is out. They get 3 losses and they're still in the conversation for
Yeah.
a playoff
Yeah. The
bid.
number of SEC teams in the AP poll is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And
Yeah.
again, just shows that they're looking at the brand or the conference saying, "Yep, you're in." And in some ways, I get the argument for Notre Dame being ranked. I disagree with it. I want it all decided on the field, but that's not the way the voters thinking. The voters thinking, "Wow, look at their recruitment class and the superior athletes they have. Look at the coaching unit that took them to the national title last year. Yeah, this team's going to be good. I know they lost a couple games, but they're going to be good. Look at all these other factors, and I don't care. Did you win or did you not? You're 0-2. Go get out of the top 25 and then prove what everybody thinks that you can win. Then once you've won games and you have a winning record, well, maybe we'll consider you for the top 25 depending on how everyone else is doing. That's the way it should be done. But clearly from the video you showed and other AP poll voters, they don't think of it like that. They look at it and they think, well, top 25 team. That means, do you have the capacity to beat, the other 105 teams in the country? Yeah, so you're top. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking, but it's clearly not what happened on the field. Because if you look at Clemson and Notre Dame, what product do you have on the field to show for it? Especially Clemson, right? I mean, you barely beat Troy, and you're coming out of here. The anchoring effect is very real, and I think the AP poll, the definition of a top 25 team varies for as many AP poll voters as there are. If they came out with a standard definition and said, forget recruitment rankings or caliber of athlete or success last year, whatever it was, and just vote what you see on the field, maybe you get a little bit more consistency in something else. But that's not what the AP poll is.
No, well, it's not, and it should be. But here's where it goes back to your point with the brands, and this is the double standard. Is you're right. There's no consistent definition, and if it really is just going to be based on the logo helmet logo, sorry, the stickers there, then fine. They just need to come forward and say that, because right now you're saying that Notre Dame gets the benefit of the doubt because of last year. They're 0-2. BYU is 2-0, and they also ended really well last year. And you look at where they ended versus Colorado versus what they've done at the beginning of this season. It's like, okay, if you're going to base it strictly off of that, then BYU should be higher than they are.
But you're not. We lose our starting quarterback. That's taken into account. Should that be taken into account? I don't know. We blew apart 2 teams and we ended 11-2 last year.
So did Notre Dame.
Right? I know. So who cares who the starting quarterback is? But you do, right? They look at that like, oh well, they lost their senior quarterback, and so they're starting a true freshman. Yeah, they're perennially number 26 in the country. I mean, it's a joke. There's not going to be logic to it because you got too many flawed humans who are trying to vote. It's the same thing with the playoff committee. There's no perfect way to do it. And I don't know that college football is trying to tamp down on this. And instead, they're trying to augment it for what Spencer Linton says. It's eyeballs, it's debate, it's the fun of college football. Oh, that ranking's a joke. But in the end, it has material impact. It does. I don't think it's an outsized impact, but it absolutely has an impact.
Oh, I think it is outsized. And you look at who it's benefiting, because who makes money off of it? It's the networks. And who is most invested in it? It's also the networks, because they're the ones, so like ESPN, when you look at their FPI, who do you think that's going to favor? The Big Ten? No, it's going to favor the SEC. And so, and BYU is actually better in the FPI this year than last year, but I've criticized the FPI every year. So just because it tells me what I want to hear doesn't mean like all of a sudden it's more credible. So I just think, you look at the incentive, because ESPN is doing the news, but they're also creating the entertainment. And then they're also creating the outcome, the format within which the champion is decided. There's way too many conflicts of interest and too much money on the line, and for you to pretend that this isn't being influenced and biased in some way. And it's just stacking the deck against teams like the Big 12 that already have been stripped of all their major brands and are already fighting an uphill battle. And then you have the whole system that's basically built against the Big 12.
It is. So you're talking about the SEC teams, right? They get additional money because they're network deals, and the network increases their revenue, which increases more money to the bigger conferences, right? And the high school kids who are coming up and playing great football hear about those brands all the time. So it is a system that is gamed for the larger schools. But I've said this before: if you're going to change that, you got to change it on the field. The SEC did not win a national title last year, and they weren't in the national title game. That has to continue. If you put together, what was it, 9 of 11 years where the SEC won a title, if you do that with the Big Ten or the Big 12 or the ACC, you force a change in the conversation, right? The talking heads can keep running their mouth about the SEC all they want, but they can't win a national title. That's not the narrative right now because they keep winning national titles. And even if the system is gamed for them, you've got to find a way to overcome that and stop the narrative. And so I thought last year was an awesome step forward. The SEC clearly took a step back. I'm not convinced of that really any good this year. I mean, look at their top teams where you got Bama and Texas, and they're stumbling out of the gate. And so yes, they'll continue to get 4 teams in the playoffs, 5 teams in the playoffs, and so they'll have a greater chance of winning that. But if you deliver on the field year after year consistently over the course of many years, you change that narrative.
But the fact that Alabama was in the conversation for that last playoff spot and not BYU tells you what's wrong
Yes,
with it. Like
it does. It does.
if you can
But
beat the top 5 team in your conference, and then and you're complaining about not getting a playoff spot, it's like go take care of business in your conference.
Right. But you got to change that narrative by winning on the field. There's no other way to change it. You have to beat the teams, right? When BYU gets to play Alabama, you got to beat Alabama. You got to do it. And last year, everybody did it. They beat the SEC schools, right? Notre Dame couldn't pull off the title against Ohio State, which I thought would have been cool, but it is what it is, right? I mean, no SEC team was in the national title game, so if you're going to change the SEC bent, it's got to be on the field. There's no other way to do it because the system is built to support that, to talk about the SEC, to augment the networks, feed more money into those schools. It's built like that, but you got to change it on the field.
Well, the Big Ten taking the place of the SEC is hardly
it is a small consolation prize. I totally agree. I'm just happy it wasn't SEC. I'd rather not be Big Ten, but step one is enough SEC.
Well, I'd rather it not be Ohio State and then SEC, probably in that order. But I guess whatever, that's a different conversation. So to your point, so Brett McMurphy, he was just shooting off this week. I mean, he often says things and takes shots, and he's I don't know if deliberately an advocate for the Big 12, but oftentimes he's saying things that I think Big 12 fans are thinking. And here he just goes after Paul Feinbaum about his take on Archie Manning and which to be fair, the young man has a lot of pressure on him. I don't mean to go after Arch Manning, but he's going after Paul Feinbaum, but he has some other ones. He's just some real heaters. He was going off this week. So he says with UCLA's back-to-back losses to UNLV in New Mexico, the Bruins have officially clinched last place in the Mountain West this season. And then he says, funny thing is they'd still take UCLA back, referring to the Pac-12. So, yeah, I mean, shots fired at everybody. And then when Big Ten boasts about its 9-game league schedules, remember, UCLA counts as one of those games. And so which I love it because not only is he taking shots at the Big Ten, but he's also inadvertently taking shots, or maybe advertently taking shots at Utah here and their strength schedule. So, but he goes on, and this was, I think, a great comment that I saw talking about Brett McMurphy. Says that he has Notre Dame. So Brett McMurphy, the guy taking shots at the Big Ten and SEC and all this stuff, says no, he still has Notre Dame, 0-2 Notre Dame, 14th on his official ballot. No Tulane, no USF, who beat Florida, who's a ranked team, and lost to a top 10 team, drops out of the top 25. And then, make that make sense. And then, so again, it just goes to highlight the issue. Like, this is like someone who's like saying things that Big 12 fans are behind on, and feel like he's in our corner. And then he still has some of these issues with his ballot that we're like, what the heck? And so for me, it just shows how systemic this stuff is. And like I say, I don't think it's necessarily like he's not there working for ESPN saying, oh, I got to put SEC teams up real high. He's just, a guy who sees things a little bit differently from a lot of these other voters, and he's still like voting the same way. So for me, it's just crazy. And so we already talked about the FPI a little bit, like I said, BYU there, but Kelly Ford, and I do like his rankings, and he makes an interesting point talking about the AP poll. He says, many people complain about the AP poll for many reasons. My greatest point of contention is, which always amplified around this time of year, is simple. is the AP poll about merit-based or deservedness or best team? And so what are we looking at? Are we trying to say what they've done, what they've accomplished, or are we trying to find the best team? And I think what it feels like is that, like he said, it can't be both, is that you are kind of caught in the middle. You've already talked about this. There's no clear delineation in how they're supposed to vote and what it's supposed to represent. Because if they're just saying, oh, here, I think these are the best teams, yeah, it's always going to go towards the brand, towards the recruiting, and all these other things. Whereas we talk about, well, what's most deserved. But the problem is when we talk about it being both, is it gets the bias from the preseason. And then you're also saying, well, this was a great win and this is more deserved for this team. When really this is based off of what? It's based off of preseason expectations, which we've already gone to show don't mean anything. And so
Right.
it's just this circle that continues to feed itself. And it's I think a real problem for the sport. Like, yes, it's great because look, here we are, we're talking about it. Other people are talking about, we're all talking about it. It
Right.
raises interest, whatever, gets people fired up. And we know that that's what, helps generate interest and traffic and all this other stuff. But for me, I think it's real problematic. And if I had more faith in the college football committee, I wouldn't really worry about this.
I agree, and I felt like in prior years they deviated a little bit more from the AP poll. Last year concerned me because I felt like the AP poll was so far off, and they just took it verbatim. But I'll tell you this: it is systemic, partly because you do get preseason expectations, but the anchoring issue is the reality of taking busy people in their lives. Right? If you're an AP poll voter, you've got a lot going on for you in your career. So you're expected to know everything that's going on in all those games, turn in your ballot pretty quick after games finish, so they can tally it up and get the poll posted. What that means is you look, on any given Saturday, you look at your rankings and you're thinking, okay, well, I got that team there and they won. Did I watch the game? No. How can you possibly watch every game? You can't. So I look at that. Maybe I check the box score, maybe not. But they won, so I'm going to leave them there. Anchoring. They might have barely won their game. They might have played an FCS school and whatever it is, right? Iowa State should not be where they're at. They should not. I mean, they have struggled mightily, and props to them for pulling it out in the clutch. But we talked about this last week. Don't go play at Arkansas State, and predictably, you almost lose. That is not a good Iowa State team, and compared to years past. And they're riding high in the rankings right now because of that fact. If I'm a voter, I didn't watch that Arkansas State game. What was it on? Was it even on ESPN? I mean, you're at Arkansas State. So you're looking at that and all right,
Yeah.
Iowa State wins, I'm going to leave them there. I'm not looking into the quality of the win, the quality of the opponent. If you have to redesign your top 25 every week from scratch, that is exhausting. What AP poll voter with a full-time busy job as a reporter is going to have time to do that? Well, some of them obviously do. It looks like Kelly Ford's thoughtful about it. Others are very transparent, saying, here are my rankings, agree, disagree. They'll change it up every week. But I do think a lot of them go through and they simply don't have time to reinvent their top 25 every week, thus the anchoring effect.
So, I mean, yeah. So that is the issue, and that's just the reality of it. And so I mean, we can get mad about it every week, but like you said, at the end of the day, BYU just has to go take care of business, and we need the Big 12 to take care of business. So let's get into um, our rankings a little bit. Actually, before we do power rankings, this is gonna increase it. This is gonna inform that conversation. But I've already brought up Brett McMurphy going to town on UCLA. But here I want to show some other tweets that were made and bring us to another point. But BYU was forced to make 4 field goals last week, talking about against Stanford. But it could be worse, referring to Utah not even being held to kicking field goals against Wyoming and miss, was it 3 or 4? And so, yeah, it could be worse, Utah fans. So I love that one. And then Utah seeing next year's roster beat UCLA tonight, referring to New Mexico. Obviously, they took most of their or a lot of their roster from New Mexico this year, Dampier and the others. And then Joe Wheat again, always good for a good fanning the flames against Utah. But he says, good morning to fans of the team with the best win in the state. He circles Stanford, and all the way down here, we have UCLA. So, but that brings me to the
Nice.
point. UCLA, their coach was fired. We hear a lot of talk about Satake, ESPN saying, oh, he'd be a leading candidate for UCLA. And when I hear that, I think there's no way Satake is going to leave BYU for UCLA right now. Because honestly, I don't even know if UCLA can offer as much as what Kalani's getting at BYU. I mean, we don't know. We don't know his contract, but based on, this is his dream job. He wants to be at BYU, and I get it. If this was like the independence era where you're down, probably financially and competition and access to the playoff, whatever, that then it's something to think about. But they're in the Big 12. He has financial resources. They have NIL. BYU's competing. He's got the coaching staff. They're having success. At this point, he's able to get everything that he needs while at BYU, his dream job. What incentive would he have to go coach at UCLA at this point? I don't know. Do you see there being any truth behind this, or should we be worried at all that he could potentially take the UCLA job?
Not for UCLA. I mean, and I don't think that it is set in stone that Kalani's a lifer. I think he very well could be. They've got him as an associate athletic director. He's clearly involved in every level of that organization. So I agree. The UCLA is a dumpster fire. They're a dumpster fire. I don't know what incentive he would have. That would be one of the most questionable career moves. Even if I wasn't a BYU fan, you'd be scratching your head at that one. Now, but could there be an top half SEC Big Ten school that eventually comes after him and he says, "Yeah, I want to make the jump and coach one of those schools"? I could see that. I could, and I think BYU is going to be vulnerable to that for as long as they're in the Big 12, because there is right now a separate echelon with SEC and Big Ten, but not UCLA. That is a dumpster fire. I don't know who in their right mind would leave what Kalani has now to go to UCLA. Now that's not to say again at some point there's a good offer, but this one does not concern me.
Yeah. And the worst case scenario is,
Yep.
if he
You
did,
got,
it's like,
you got
go
someone
figure that
pretty
out.
good right there.
Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a casualty to lose Satake, but if you feel like, you
J-
got Jay Hill in the wings, like,
Jay Hill's not going to recruit at the same level as Satake. There will be a transition period. You'll play elite level defense, um, and that's a little, the smallest impact hire you could make. Roderick probably sticks around, so you keep your big 26 recruiting class, those kinds of things. But there's a change. Kalani has a gift for recruitment, establishing a culture. His approach to the love and learn model, all of that stuff is just unmatched. And you lose a little bit of that with Jay Hill. So I think there's a drop off if you have to go to Jay Hill. But boy, that's a fantastic person to have in the wings.
yeah, well, I mean, and there's going to be change, and Satake could bring people with him to UCLA and whatever. But
True.
yeah, whenever you go through transition, there is going to be some of that. But so again, I'm not so worried. I think it's crazy. Again, probably just clickbait or whatever, but we will see. So, all right, so that officially brings us now to the power rankings for this week. So now that we've crapped on UCLA enough, let's get into it, and we'll just like always, we'll just start at the bottom, work our way up. And just to frame this, because I get a lot of comments saying, "Oh, Homer, this or that," or other people saying, "Oh, we're not being fair here." Like, this is like, I do what the playoff committee is supposed to do. I don't know how you do it. I like literally don't even look at what I did the previous week. I throw it away, whatever, and I start from scratch. And I'm strictly looking at what has happened. I'm trying not to. I probably do a little bit. I try not to take preseason expectations for these teams into account when I do these power rankings. I am looking at what teams have accomplished to this point and what they've shown, knowing that full well next week it could flip completely. I expect a lot of variance in these from week to week because there's so little data. And as we
Yeah.
get more data points, it's going to go more, it's going to start locking in more and more as we go throughout the season. But at this point, like the AP poll, it doesn't actually mean anything, except ours truly doesn't mean anything, and has no impact on anything. But it's a fun conversation to have. And see, this is where it's fun because we're not influencing the outcome of the
That's right.
play. But I do just think we had to take that into consideration. It's like, what have you done to this point? And so, all right, with that being said, which people are still going to get upset at the power rankings, but I've made that disclaimer. Why don't you start us off with who do you got at the bottom this week?
Dead last, Kansas State. I mean, I worry about that program. I got serious concerns about that program. I am I don't know what's going on there, but their hallmarks are defense and run game and taking care of the football. And I don't know what's happened, but the bottom's fallen out. They are struggling. I picked them notably to beat Arizona. Props to Arizona, but whatever's going on in the Little Apple is scary.
The Little Apple. Yeah, I agree with you there. And they also have why the next team I have on this is Oklahoma State. While they had probably a worse single loss, at least it was to a top 10 team and at their house. And they only have played 2 games. Kansas State has played 4 and has almost lost all 4 of them. Now you could say now they've almost won a couple more of those. That's fine. They've been in all those games, so that is worth something. But it's been pretty bad, and even worse than the losses is what you were saying is like just the state of the program at this point is
Yeah.
very, very concerning for Kansas State, which is too bad because that's actually a Big 12 team that I enjoy rooting for. When they're not playing BYU, I like them, so it is a bummer. How about you? I'm
So I
sorry,
did Oklahoma. I did
comment
Oklahoma
was supposed to be
State.
about Oklahoma State, and I was talking more about Kansas State, but yeah.
I did Oklahoma State as well for the same
Yeah.
reasons. But then I got Colorado at 14. Big loss at Houston. Really showed I mean, they got problems on defense and offense, and their newfangled quarterback is not the answer. He was the answer for 1 week against an FCS school, and I watched a lot of that game, and boy, Colorado's got some deep set issues.
With you there. At 13, I have another team who, again, they could still find themselves at the top of this list by the end of the season, but they've shown some cracks so far. I've got ASU.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
I have. Granted, they lost to an SEC team. It's the bottom of the SEC, and you were supposed to be the top of our conference. For what that does to the Big 12, what that does to your image, and then to go out and look a little shaky at first in their home opener in a game that they should have won handedly, and they won by a pretty comfortable margin against Texas State, and they were some of those scores came later, but
Yeah.
it's just to me they've shown. I think that loss is like very detrimental for not only their own program but also for the rest of the conference. So I've got them at 13.
I had them a little higher. I put them that low last week because I was really upset about the Mississippi State loss. They win their home opener. That's good. I bumped them up a couple slots, but I've got Kansas there.
Mhm.
Um, Still haven't done a lot to me. I mean, they had two great wins against bad teams, and then really did not show up against Missouri. So I got them stuck at 13. I think they'll move up the list eventually.
I'll get to Kansas in a sec. Well, yeah, I've got. Oh, actually, let's just talk about it now. I've got them. My thought with Kansas, I've got them in the middle. Is that I mean, one, I have BYU's only had 2 games where they've beaten up on bad teams. BYU look good, and then Kansas does have a loss in addition to that, but it was against a mid-tier SEC team rivalry game at their place. They kept it relatively close. I didn't want to ding them too much for that. So again, I think they're kind of still in the middle until we learn a little bit more. Um, but who do you have at 12?
12, I got UCF,
Yeah, me too.
which I feel a little disconcerted about putting them that low because we talk about the product on the field, you win, but not great wins. Well, there's a lot to be determined with UCF. I don't think they're great this year.
Yeah, I felt like it was a little double standard as well, putting him this low. But that close win against UCF, or sorry, against Jack State at home to start the season is still kind of resonating in my brain. Like, way to go for beating up on a little guy. So it shows
Yeah.
that there is some level of competence there.
So you
But
were kind of anchoring UCF there to lower seed, is that?
no, because last week I had them in the middle, and so I hate to move them down on a bye week, but again, it's just there's fewer data points, and
Yeah.
that'll start evening out because there will be weeks that other teams have bye weeks, and so I hate dinging a team when they don't play, but we'll learn a lot about them this week when they play UNC, and we'll talk about that when we get to our picks. But
Yeah.
okay, so both of us have UCF at 12. At 11, I have Cincy.
I'm there with you.
Okay.
I mean, obviously you put up a ton of points against a bad team, but I don't think Nebraska looks that great, and you couldn't pull it off against Nebraska. So a lot to be determined there, but not looking fantastic so far for Cincy.
I think they still have a chance. Like they still worry me on BYU's schedule. I still think and that was early. That Nebraska game was early in the season. I think they still have a chance. We'll see. But again, their other games don't tell us a whole lot. And so, I mean, 11 sounds low, but that's still kind of middle range, I think, for the conference. And so they're on the lower end of that until they show us a little bit more. Who do you have at 10?
10, I have Arizona State for the
Okay.
reasons you clock. So a little bit higher, but not too much.
Okay. So I have West Virginia at 10. And it's similar to Cincy, similar because they have 3 games and 2 win. They're 2-1. They looked really good in the home opener against a bad team. They lost to a MAC team, and so I'm holding that against them. That's why there's low. Now that was a competitive game, and Ohio is, a good MAC team, right? They won the MAC last year, so it's not like complete dog water there, but you still have to hold that again. I mean, Ohio might beat Nebraska in a game, and so I don't know, but they beat Pitt. I'm not convinced Pitt is really good, and West Virginia didn't always look great during it. In fact, because of the QB changes and those turnovers, they kind of helped keep Pitt in that game. Arguably, West Virginia maybe could have won even more, but it shows that there's still cracks in that program, in that team, and they're working through it. But they beat a rival, and that's huge. And it's from another conference, like that's huge. And so again, that's why I have them ahead of Cincy.
So I've got West Virginia as high as 7.
Wow!
Because tell me a better non-conference win that the Big 12 has.
That's fair.
So I'm embarrassed by their MAC loss, but to your point, it was a good MAC team, and I have respect for the MAC. And I had them in an earlier draft of this. I did have them at 10, exactly where you had them. But when I look at them, I'm like, man, we're sitting here complaining that we just can't get quality non-conference wins, and West Virginia does it. The best one so far. I mean, some people see Pitt as a dark horse to vie for the ACC title. I don't think they're that good, but we'll see. And maybe at the end of the season we look back and it wasn't a great victory. But up to this point, to me, that's the strongest non-conference win, and so I'm going to give them a little credibility for that.
I felt like I was giving them a little credibility after the Ohio loss, so I felt like that was boosting them up. But yeah, I think that's fair. It was obviously super important win, and they should be really happy with that. And then just above them, that's where I have Kansas. We talked about that again. Mm-hmm. I just think a lot of question marks there still. Who do you have at 9?
I've got Houston at 9. Okay. Big victory against Colorado. They look much improved, and that Houston program needed that.
Okay. At 8, who you got there?
Baylor.
I have,
which we'll see. We'll see. There's a big question mark around them. They could be good. Is Sawyer Robertson really that good? I don't know. We'll see.
And arguably, I mean, that win, both overtime wins against ACC teams, rivalry games, that Baylor win over SMU based on what SMU did last year, that might be a better win than Pitt.
That's true. That's
less
true.
Charged, but still might be.
And on the road, ranked at the time. We'll see how good SMU is, but that could be a better win.
So at 7, who do you have?
At 7, I have Iowa State. Oh, excuse me. No, I got West Virginia at 7.
Oh, that's right. Okay, West Virginia. Yep. Okay, so at 7, and this is where I have Utah. They've fallen for me in the ranks a little bit. I had them really high. Some people trash on me, said I was like in in Utah's corner and whatever. I was just looking on paper, like they had some good wins. They've looked solid to that point. Again, I'm taking every data point into account. The UCLA win is looking less and less impressive as we.
Absolutely. They beat the worst P4 team in the country, and that's who I thought Stanford was. I thought our win against Stanford was the worst P4 team in the country. They go and beat Boston College, and UCLA looks awful. UCLA, they might be the worst P4 team. I mean, first one to fire their coach, right?
And then exactly, and then 3-0, or 3-0. Sorry, at the half at Wyoming is really concerning. They showed some other issues, and so all the credibility that we'd give them early on kind of disappeared, and now they have 2 wins over really bad teams, and then struggled against another probably mediocre Mountain West team. For me, it's like you're 3-0, so that's why I have them above some of these other teams, but there's a lot of question marks there. So maybe even 7 you could argue is high. because Baylor's loss against Auburn is probably better than any of Utah's wins.
We'll see. I mean, they've played bad teams all around. Now, Wyoming might be okay, right? They're 2-1. They could end up being a decent Mountain West team. We don't know. I had to chuckle that halftime score because, man, how many times has BYU been in Laramie and things go squirrely and sideways in that stadium. So I was getting a kick out of it. That's about how I thought that game would go, though. I thought Wyoming would really play spirited in the first half, and ultimately Utah would prove to be too much for them, and that's kind of what happened. But I don't blame you. I've got Utah a little bit higher than that at number 5. But that's again because they're undefeated. They certainly showed cracks in that offense, and it'll be interesting. That Texas Tech's going to be a big one for them. We'll see that when we get to those picks.
And that's just it. Like Utah could run the table in the conference, and look, maybe that happens. I don't think it will. Like they could. I'm just saying to this point, what they've done is less impressive than what we thought to start the season, and they were really riding high off of those. And now that that's kind of been cut out from underneath them, I had to bring them down for it. So
Sure.
who do you have at 7?
So at 7, I have West Virginia. At 6, I have Iowa State. I dropped them quite a bit. Like I said, undefeated, highest ranked team in the conference. They struggle every week. Every week they struggle. And to struggle at Arkansas State was not a good look for the conference. It was not a good look for Iowa State. I'm glad they pulled it out. But I still am concerned about our game against them because it's at Iowa State and it's after the Utah game. If it wasn't, I'd feel pretty good about that game. I'd feel really good about going into Ames if it wasn't following the rivalry week. Because I just don't think that Iowa State has really shown out.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of that on Iowa State. I have them a little bit higher, and the reason for it is still they've won. They've beaten 2 rivals. They have one of the more impressive out of conference wins. I mean, Iowa, I don't know if it's that impressive, but and so and they found ways to win. Like people were saying these same things about BYU last year, like, oh, look at all these close games. But BYU knew how to win when push came to shove, and they found ways. And so I also don't want to ding them too much for that. So I have them a little higher. Not to say I don't share those same concerns, but up to this point, I still think, and they've played 4 games and they've won them. And so I think they should be recognized for that to this point. At 6 is actually where I have our beloved Cougars. And so again, only 2 games, 2 bad teams. I think BYU is in the mix to win the Big 12 or show up in Arlington. But I think to this point, they just have to play a little bit more, and they'll have a chance this weekend against a team in ECU that's looking ever more like that game's going to be more difficult than we were kind of hoping going into this. So they're going to have a real test ahead of them and a chance to have not get a decent win under their belt.
I bet the Cougars at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit higher, ahead of the Utes, ahead of Iowa State. Just based on margin of victory, but they need that quality opponent.
But if Stanford keeps beating teams like Boston College, I mean, that
right? Come on. That's partly why I did keep BYU so high. Is that Stanford win was big for BYU. It legitimized that victory in Provo in a way that they needed. And so we'll see. That may be Stanford's only win of the year, but hopefully they're a legitimate team.
Hey, they might beat like Wake Forest or somebody else. So I don't even know if they play Wake. I'm just saying they. I don't put anyway. Yeah, they can if they keep beating other bad teams, they could be the lesser of the bad teams. Then hey, that's something. So where are we at? 5, I guess 5. We've gone up to 4 with you. My team at 5, I have TCU, and so this is the same thing. They're riding high off of that UNC win, which we'll see what that turns out to be. For me, that's the most visible out of conference win that we've had for the conference. And so TCU can, get a lot of credit for that, but then they've beaten up on some bad teams, but they're still in there. And again, they'll play TCU this week and have a chance to show. And it'll be interesting because it's so close to when Baylor played SMU that you'll have a closer direct comparison between those 3 teams and kind of get a feel for where they're at. But yeah, so TCU, they're still up there near the top, but again, you got to start playing somebody, just like BYU.
Yeah, absolutely. I put TCU up to number 2. Mostly because, again, I think the product on the field has been good. I did drop them from the top spot because they gave up 21 points to Abilene Christian and only beat them by 21. That's not a great showing for purple versus purple. You got to do a little bit better on that.
All right. So we have not either one of us. So that means you got them in top 3. But at number 4, I have Arizona, and this surprised me. I'm still not saying I'm an Arizona believer, but I believe in them a little bit more. I mean, they beat up on the team we have power ranked at the bottom of this list in Kansas and State, and it was still a close game. But they've shown a level of confidence that we didn't see from them at all last season, and they're the first one to have. Oh no, I guess Iowa State, they got that conference win, but it is a early conference win that they have, and so I think you got to give them credit for that. And I, we'll see what they do going forward, but I think they've shown a lot so far. So I think 4 on this list is deserving.
Yeah, and I put them at number 3. Same reasons. I think they'll finish probably middle of the pack in the Big 12. I don't know that they're an elite team, but I had them picked in the bottom 3 to start the year. I did not think they were going to be any good this year, and that was an impressive victory, and shows their program might have some legs this year.
Yeah, and we both had BYU losing team in our preseason picks to a team that we didn't expect them to, and for me, it was Arizona, and mostly just because I felt like in those first 6 games, I was like, I don't know if I see BYU going 6-0, maybe they will, and I still think they can. And so I was like, which of these teams do I see? And then BYU going to Arizona, and from what we've seen so far, that is a game that we should be concerned about. Like BYU
Yeah,
legitimately could
it's
lose.
gonna be
And so,
tough.
all right, so that was your number 3. My number 3 was ISU. We've talked about Iowa State. So at number 2, who do you? And then you've got TCU.
I got TCU number 2. Yep.
And
Who do
then
you
so
got there?
at number 2, I have Texas Tech, which means that's your number 1. And again, they haven't played anybody super impressive. Oregon State's looked bad this year, but they've done it 3 times and look just as impressive, if not more impressive, I think, as the weeks go on. And so even though they've played bad teams, they've just continued to look the part. And
Yeah.
so for that, I rewarded them.
Yeah, I don't know that Texas Tech is going to finish at the top of the conference. I've got them number 1 for those same reasons. It's a small sample size, and they've looked the most impressive out of all the teams. They have played lesser competition. So is BYU. So is Utah. How do you judge that? Right now they've looked the most impressive, so they're number 1.
Yeah. So for number 1, if you're keeping tabs at home, you'll already know who I have at number 1, but you may have forgotten because Adam mentioned this team way down on the bottom half of his power rankings. So you've probably forgotten about him. But at number 1, I have Houston. And so again, I do not, for the record,
Defend it, Trevor.
This is not a prediction. This is not who I have the most faith in. This is strictly looking at what they've done to this point. And they have a bigger sample size than BYU. They've had a conference win over a team that is struggling, but has talent and should, a lot of people were expecting to go in and that Houston was going to lose to Colorado. And so they got that win and they did it looking good. And they have, impressive or at least, quality wins over bad teams, but so does everybody else in the conference. And so when you look at that record, it was like, well, Texas Tech has looked maybe more impressive, but they haven't played anyone to the level of Colorado yet or gotten that conference win. And so when I'm looking at those, I just think, okay, Arizona's kind of done the same thing. But Houston, I think that their win over Colorado was more impressive and more dominant than Arizona's win over Kansas State. And so I just liked what I saw. Maybe it's just recency bias, but I'm rewarding the Cougs, the double O Cougs, and putting them at the top this week. For the record, I don't expect them to be there for very long, but this week they're number 1.
Showing them some love. I like it.
I'm trying to show, put my money where my mouth is and say like, hey, we're going to mix it up at the end of, every week, starting fresh, and really rewarding based on what we've seen on the field. So I think Houston deserves it. But this brings us to our picks from last week because one of us picked Houston to win that game and one of us did not.
Yeah, I think I picked Houston, didn't I? I picked Houston and I picked Arizona too. Is that? I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure. Pretty
that's
sure
not
I went 8-0 on my picks.
not exactly how I remember it. So, so this last week you were 7-3. So yeah, you picked Colorado. I'll just say the ones we got wrong for our Big 12 picks. For anyone who's new, you had Colorado and K-State and Pitt, and I was 9-1. And the one I got wrong was Pitt over West Virginia, and that is one I am happy to be wrong on. I'm happy to eat whatever, just like Pitt, and be wrong on that one. And so that puts our overall record, me at 35-6, you at 31-10. That's me 85% and you 75.
I'm
And
struggling. I'm struggling out the gate, 4 games behind.
I'm just hoping I can hold on to this because this has been nice and refreshing after the last few years. Is this 2 or 3 years that we've done this? So it's good to be on the other end of it. But anyway, so let's go through and make our picks this week real quick. So I only have my selection. I got to remember the games here. So here, it'll be faster to do on my phone. Let's see here. So, oh yeah, first one, we got Tulsa at Oklahoma State. Who you got?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. I think it's still a stretch for them. It's a close game, but I think they can pull it out.
Yeah, it's not like, I mean, Tulsa's 1-2 as well. So I think
Yeah.
Oklahoma State, if they don't win this, because I don't think Gundy is going to get fired mid-season. He might be done at Oklahoma State.
No, too much respect for him.
But if he lost it to Tulsa, that might be a real possibility. So, okay. The big one, and I'm actually in Utah right now, and but I won't be on Saturday. But my cousin said 2 tickets to this game that he can't use, and I was like,
"That's tempting."
Yeah, he's like, "You should stick around for Saturday." I was like, "That would be fun," but then I'd have to wear Texas Tech. We have to buy some Texas Tech gear, but then it still looks a lot like Utah colors, so it'd be very conflicting. So maybe better I just go catch the BYU game in East Carolina in Greenville. So who do you have in that game?
Texas Tech. Like I said, I think they've looked the part. I think Utah's offense has been a little shaky. And given how bad UCLA is, everybody thought that kind of anchored Utah, like, oh, okay, they're back. But I think they're facing their first real defense of the year. And I think Devin Dampier is in for a shock. I've got Texas Tech.
Yeah, same, all of that. And the money line is Utah -3.5, which means it's best since they're at home. It's essentially a wash, a toss up. So if it's a toss up, why would I go with Utah? But Texas Tech has just looked the part. All right, SMU at TCU.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with TCU. I preseason pick for the conference title. I think they've mostly looked the part. Maybe not against Abilene Christian, but they're at home. I got to take TCU.
Yeah, and I think TCU against UNC's look better than what we've really seen Baylor all season. And so, like I said, we'll see. We'll kind of have that comparison and see who looked better against SMU. But I think TCU pulls it off as well. Next one is, I think, the most interesting one of the week, perhaps, is UNC at UCF.
That is really interesting, and I'm going to go with UNC because I'm not bought into UCF yet. I think Belichick can coach up a team. I don't know that he's going to be a great college football coach in the end, but they've got enough talent on that to win that game.
I think so too, and I have the same pick, but I mean, it is at UCF, and they have UCF up by 6.5, so almost a touchdown. So I don't know. I was tempted to go with UCF on this one, but at the end of the day, yeah, I've just not completely bought in on them. Okay, West Virginia at Kansas.
This is going to be an interesting one.
12, yeah.
Yep, this is going to be an interesting one. I think I'm going to pick Kansas for 2 reasons. One, they're at home. 2, West Virginia's coming off of an emotional rivalry game. We know what that is. That was a draining victory against Pitt, and it's really hard to turn around and win on the road like that. And so I'm going to go with Kansas.
That was my exact thought, and Kansas sat for a week as well. So
yep.
I'm going with Kansas on this one. Okay, ASU at Baylor.
Man, I'm going to go with Baylor. And that's saying more about ASU in my opinion. I think ASU is taking a step back. I think Baylor's going to find their rhythm. This is going to be a high-scoring game because I don't think either team has elite defense.
Okay. Wait, sorry, you said Baylor?
I said Baylor. Yep.
Yeah, that's what she said. I was all right. Yeah, I did the same thing there. All right. Another This is another one that I had a hard time with. We had some really bad matchups that are surprisingly interesting, but we have Wyoming at Colorado.
That is really interesting. That is a tough one, and I'm going to go with Wyoming in this one because I'm mad at Colorado last week when I picked them for Houston. So I'm going to go with Wyoming.
I love it. I love it. I was really tempted. I picked Colorado. I think at the end of the day, they'll have more talent. It is at Colorado, but I don't feel confident in this. And so I'm also hoping for the sake of the conference that
Yeah,
they win it. All right. So the last one we have is BYU at ECU. And what do you think if we like? I never want to pick against BYU. What about for the BYU pick? We do the over under. We don't really do that with
you can do
anybody
that.
else
We can
because
do that.
we don't have to pick against BYU. We can just pick the over under. How we think we're going to do. Does that
Yeah,
sound fair?
that sounds
Okay.
good.
Because while I do think ECU is going to be a tough game, there's no way I'm not picking BYU to win this game, and neither are you. So, all right. So it's 7:30 p.m. kickoff. BYU's coming off a bye week, but you got ECU at home. BYU is -7 here, so by a touchdown. Do you take the over or the under?
I've got the under. I've got the under. ECU is terrifying. They're terrifying to me. They really are. Mostly because our offense is unproven. We haven't had to unleash the offense. ECU is a terrifying defense. Our defense has been nails against two teams that primarily run the ball. ECU throws the ball like crazy. They don't even care about the run game. Um, I'm terrified. And the fact that I haven't watched a BYU victory in person for 13 years, and I'm going to be in person at this game, I'm ready to jinx the whole stadium for the Cougs because that's apparently what I do when I attend. So I am terrified for this game. I got the Cougs winning 17-14. I'm taking the under.
Well, do you remember my record of games that I've attended, both home and away, since I've graduated? And my record, I can't remember. I'll have to go find the graphic. I did it last year, but I'm like 2-11 or something like that. It's terrible. So my brother
Yeah.
uninvited did the UCF game last year, which actually would have helped my stats. So, but I'm I don't feel confident about it, but I actually picked the over on this one. Now I don't think it'll be much over, but I think the teams will struggle. But at the end of the day, BYU will do enough, and I think the defense will do enough, and our special teams will keep us in position to be able to eke out a little bit more. So I think the game won't necessarily be, comfortable, but that BYU will be able to get more than a touchdown, even if it's just more. So, all
I
right.
hope
So
so. I hope we unleash the bear, and all of a sudden everybody stops to chatter about the true freshman quarterback, and he throws for 300. I hope that's what happens.
All right, so we're pretty much on lockstep, except you've got Wyoming in the under, and I've got Colorado in the over, which is great because that means you can't make up too much ground on me this week. So as long as
We'll get there. I got you in my sights.
so, all right. Well, this one is excellent. I really look forward to it. Next time I see you will be at the ECU game, and so that'll be something really fun to look forward to. Please, if you haven't already, like the channel, like this video, subscribe to the channel. And we're still working on getting a video for ECU for this week, get some guests on and give us a little bit of insights and preview into that matchup. So be sure to look for that, hit the bell, all those things so you can catch all that. And until then, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.